my name is Amy. Sitting here on the couch, with my 9-month-old son, Leo, on my chest, I'm reminded of that fateful baptism dinner. It was a night that changed everything, a night when the simmering tension in our family finally boiled over. I can still hear the click of my fork hitting the porcelain plate. The silence that followed was deafening, a silence filled with unspoken words and long-held frustrations. My mother-in-law, Gloria, had just looked at Leo, still smelling of milk and new life, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, she had a baby, but she won't raise him. Always running back to her parents. In that moment, something in me snapped. I set my fork down deliberately, and I heard the metallic sound echo in the quiet room. And who's supposed to provide? I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Your son won't pay for diapers, but he bankrolls his perfectly healthy 50-year-old mother. Gloria froze. Her face went from flushed and self-assured to pale and shocked. And then, my father, who had been sitting quietly at the far end of the table, folded his napkin and spoke. He didn't raise his voice, but his words carried a weight that made the entire table go still. Let me rewind a bit. I met my husband, Ethan, a few years ago. He was 33, working in marketing, a steady job but not overly glamorous. He had a warm smile and a kind heart, and I fell in love with him quickly. When we first got together, he talked about his mother, Gloria, with so much love and gratitude. She sacrificed so much for me, he would say, and I thought it was beautiful, a sign of a good man. Gloria was a 50-year-old woman in excellent health. She used to work as a real estate agent, but 3 years ago, she decided to take a break. What that really meant was that she started relying on Ethan for financial support. Every month, Ethan sent her $1,200. When I asked him about her savings or pension, he just said, she's my mother, as if that explained everything. I was 7 months pregnant when I really started to understand the financial strain. I had to take unpaid maternity leave because my job at the local clinic didn't offer paid leave. We were living entirely on Ethan's salary. I'm a planner, so I made a spreadsheet laying out all our expenses, rent, utilities, groceries, and the things we needed for the baby. I calculated everything down to the last dollar, leaving a small cushion of $500 per month. But what I didn't account for was the $1,200 going to Gloria. When I found it on the bank statement, filed under family transfer, I was stunned. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, looking at the laptop, feeling the baby move inside me. I thought, this money should be buying Leo's diapers. I didn't say anything to Ethan right away. I told myself I'd wait for the right moment, when we were both calm. But the right moment never seemed to come. The bank statements kept showing the same transfer, and the diapers kept running out. Leo was born, and he was perfect. In the hospital, I held him in my arms, and I thought that everything would be different now. But Ethan still put his mother first. He left for 2 hours on our first night home to take groceries to Gloria because she said she wasn't feeling well. And when I told him we were short on the electricity bill, he still transferred the $1,200 as usual. Gloria visited when Leo was 3 weeks old. She came with a big bouquet of flowers and a strong perfume that filled the apartment. She held Leo for a few minutes and then started criticizing everything. The way I decorated the nursery, the brand of formula I bought, and my frequent visits to my parents' house. You need to be more independent, she said. I went to my parents' house because my mother would hold Leo so I could get some sleep, and my father would fix things around the house that Ethan never had time for. But I didn't say any of this to Gloria. I just smiled and offered her tea. The baptism was scheduled for Leo's 8th week. It was a small, intimate ceremony with just our immediate families. My parents and my sister were on one side, and Ethan's mother and his aunt, Helen, were on the other. After the ceremony, we planned to have dinner at our apartment. My mother made a delicious meal, and I baked a cake the night before while Leo was asleep. During the dinner, the conversation was carefully skirting around sensitive topics. Gloria had moved her place setting to the middle of the table, taking the center stage as usual. She was directing all her questions at Ethan, asking about his work, his friends, and a trip she was planning. Ethan was responding to her with all his attention, refilling her wine glass before mine. My mother asked about our child care plans. I started to explain that I was going back to work in 4 weeks on a reduced schedule and that my mother would take Leo on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's when Gloria set down her fork and made that hurtful comment. After I spoke up, my father took over. He talked about the beginning, about the small apartment I had rented on Elm Street before I met Ethan. I had worked long hours at the clinic, saving every penny. I had built a life for myself, and when Ethan asked me to move in with him, I hesitated. Not because I didn't love him, but because I was afraid of losing my independence. My father also pointed out that Gloria had never offered to help with Leo so I could rest, and she had never reduced the financial burden on Ethan. He said, there is a difference between a family that supports and a family that extracts. Ethan finally admitted that he had known all along about the financial strain but had been too afraid to confront his mother. He said he had sent her $1,200 that month, while we had spent $55 on diapers, which I had paid for with my last bit of personal savings. Gloria left before dessert. She stood at the door, waiting for Ethan to follow her, but he didn't move. The rest of the meal was quiet, but there was a new sense of honesty in the air. After that night, I knew I had to take action. I made an appointment with a financial advisor, a woman named Sarah. She told me that in some cases, consistent financial support to a family member could be considered a legal obligation. She recommended a family law attorney, Mr. Thompson. I met with Mr. Thompson. He was a very careful man, taking notes and asking me detailed questions. He confirmed what Sarah had said and added that if Ethan's name was on any significant assets and our marriage deteriorated, the regular transfers to Gloria would be considered in the financial settlement. I decided to have an honest conversation with Ethan. I drafted an email, laying out all our financial issues, the transfers, and what needed to change. Ethan read the email and said he should have handled things differently. He promised to call Gloria and tell her that the transfers needed to stop or be significantly reduced. The call was long and difficult. When Ethan came back in, he told me that Gloria had cried and said I had humiliated her. She also threatened to move in with us if the transfers were reduced. But Ethan stood his ground and said no. In the following weeks, Gloria called Ethan multiple times, complaining about her loneliness, her sacrifices, and my coldness. She also called Helen and gave her a distorted version of the baptism dinner. But I kept records of everything, emails, bank statements, and notes from our conversations. 6 weeks after the baptism, I returned to work. Ethan rearranged his work hours so he could be home with Leo on the days my mother wasn't available. He did this without telling Gloria, which showed me that he was starting to rebalance his loyalties. 4 months after the baptism, a certified letter arrived. It was from a law office, and inside was a handwritten loan agreement from 3 years ago, stating that Ethan had borrowed $15,000 from Gloria and that the monthly transfers were repayment. The outstanding balance was still $12,000. I called Ethan, and he admitted that Gloria had mentioned it a few weeks ago, but he didn't think she would actually use it. I called Mr. Thompson, and he said the agreement had many flaws and was unlikely to hold up in court. He recommended sending a formal cease and desist letter to Gloria's attorney. 3 months later, Gloria found a part-time job at a local store. Ethan found out from Helen, and when he told me, I simply said, good. It wasn't about being vindictive, it was about a healthy 50-year-old woman taking responsibility for her own life. Now, Leo is 9 months old. He's pulling himself up on the coffee table, exploring the world with wide-eyed curiosity. Ethan and I are different than we were before the baptism. Our relationship is more honest, and we talk about our problems instead of avoiding them. I often think about that baptism dinner. It was a difficult but necessary moment. It was like forcing open a door that had been stuck for too long. My father's folded napkin is a symbol of that moment, a reminder of the power of a well-placed, quiet word. I look at the photo on my phone, taken a week after the baptism. Leo is on my hip, and we're both looking out the window. It's a reminder of the strength I found that night, the strength to speak up and fight for my family. And I know that no matter what challenges come our way, we'll face them together.